comes down to this, though, in the business plan. I think that's a pretty good definition right there. We're going to attempt to produce a profit by delivering goods or services which satisfy market needs. And from my own experience, again, I'll tell you this, since I've been volunteering with this for 10 years, is that the clients I've worked with have a much better knowledge of their costs than they do of the market. And I think that's pretty normal. I mean, if they're going to lease a building or whatever they're going to do, here's how much you're going to pay for the lease, here's what you're going to pay for the utilities, here's what you're going to pay for the goods. So they measure costs pretty well. The thing they never really get a good handle on, usually, and I think this is normal, is the market, because they're going to come out here. I don't care whether they're going to do an art show or whether they're going to do, one lady made wooden angels. She surprised me because it's successful. She had 3 different kinds of wooden angels, and you think that's just a Christmas business, but she runs it year-round, making different kinds, and they're all ethnic. And I was amazed, they're Scandinavian angels and Chinese angels and black angels and da-da-da. Anyway, she knows how to make angels out of wood and cloth and da-da-da. It works for her. She does it in her basement, by the way, and with all family members putting things together. So the thing that I'm going to say is that I think in order to be successful in a small business, the first thing is you got to have a lot of strong desire to make whatever you're going to make a venture into, make it really work. If you have the desire, you can probably get the coaching to put the numbers together. Probably can. And the highest risk you're going to face is the market itself and the competition, because the competition never stands still. One of the things that happens if you are successful, someone will say, wow, David's got a great business over here. I'm going to go do something like David's doing because he's making a ton of money. So that's one thing that happens. Measuring the competition is difficult, and measuring the size of the market are both the difficult things. So how do I flip this thing over here? Where's the next button I push?
Just a space bar.
Space bar.
Right here?
Go.
Oop, wrong way? Can we do it twice?
Page back.
Okay.
Page up.
Right there? I think I did it right. What did I do? Hold it down too long?
Here.
Okay. So, I guess I kind of got ahead of my own graphics here. You got to have a notion of what you want your business to be. Describe it in some detail too. Just here's the nature of my business. Marketing. This is a lot of dimensions to marketing. This is advertising. How the various media advertising. Did I put down right up there? Yeah, marketing today. It's very dependent upon your website, terms and conditions, card readers. What are you going to do? How are you going to charge your clients? What's the net pay? I mean, there are a lot of dimensions to marketing here as to make it easy for your customer to buy your goods. Finance, classical. What do things cost? How to portray the income statement. Balance sheet. And the last one, by the way, is something that small businesses, startups really have problems with. This is cash in and out of the till, and usually they're cash poor. And so you really got to watch cash flow. You might have a great big sheet over here that says, I got all these IOUs, but if they're coming in after 60 days and you're paying out in 30, you've got an empty cash register sometimes. And you really got to pay attention to cash flow. And working, like most of us work for big companies, in our unit, we didn't have to worry about cash flow because GE or Rockwell Collins had cash. But with a small business, you often don't have cash. So that's something to keep your eye on. See if I do this right this time. I think so. I think it's the sentence on top that counts. The catch is, you're going to do something, whether it's a service or whether it's a product, and somehow the world is living without it right now. I mean, the world is living without your product right now. It's getting by without it. So somehow your notion is going to be, hey, I'm going to bring something to the marketplace, either goods or service, that is, people are going to choose to give their money to me, and they're going to give money to me for which I can create that goods or service at a cost less than what they're going to provide the money. So I'm going to achieve a profit. So the catch is here to, make sure your vision is sound. Competition is the thing I just talked about a moment ago. This is deadly. It's really, people it's very deadly because competition changes all the time. You think, I know my competition right now, and you know, you're successful, they copy you. You get new competitors. You get new alliances against you. You may have to have new alliances too. So competition in the free marketplace is what really makes the free marketplace work. Competition is why you guys are old enough to remember the Soviet Union. They made everything. They made cars, they made cameras, they made everything. But none of it was exportable because it wasn't competitive. I mean, it worked, sort of, but it wasn't competitive because they didn't have competition. Local area made shoes, what kind of shoes you got? Made women's shoes and made men's shoes. It didn't really, there was no real competition though, so things were kind of poor, okay? But by the way, one of the MBA classes Rocco Collins sent me to was down at the University of Iowa, and two of the guys were from Czechoslovakia when it was communist. One of them ran the electrical power energy of the nation of Czechoslovakia under the communist system, and one of them was a professor of economics at Prague University. It was the most informative information I ever received about communism was from these two guys as to why it's so difficult to make it work. Your products or services, and by the way, it often is both. Jim and I work with Rocco Collins, and we deliver the products, but you know, serving them is every bit as critical as, and this is aviation products, every bit as critical as the products that we delivered to the airplane companies was the service, because sooner or later they need service, and that's a worldwide service obligation. So service is both an obligation, but it's also a tremendous profit opportunity. Some of our highest profits at Rockwell Collins come because we've got a reputation for very good service, and we do. Financial perspectives, obviously in the end, you're going to measure your success in terms of financial units, so obviously financial data here. ROA, ROF, return on assets, return on sales, and so forth. So, got to have an aim. When you start up, okay, you got a choice here. Most of the small businesses begin with a sole proprietorship because it's so easy to do. The three of you could, you know, give a name down here to the, what is it, county clerk, Jim? and you're in business, literally. She'll file your name, and you have a legal entity. And you know, in America, this business is treated like an individual, so you're in business. It's interesting. You're going to have a site, you're going to have an address. And limited liability corporations were introduced a few years ago to make sure that you couldn't come back and hit your assets in case you get into legal troubles. And so many of the startups today are LLCs as opposed to sole proprietorships. And even if you start the business quickly, as a sole proprietorship, many move into a limited liability quite quickly for protection of your other assets. Business relationships. Now, I chose business relationships because, you know, you're going to have a business relationship with a bank. You're going to have a business relationship with an accountant. You may have a tax advisor. But you know, the other thing that people don't often recognize, you may have one of your important business relationships, maybe your mom, your dad, your cousin, your friend. And if you don't record that, you're not recording something that's important to you. Because maybe some of the coaching you received when you went into business was from a friend, or your dad, or your mom, or your uncle, or your aunt. And don't ignore those. That's why I say business relationships. They could be informal ones, but they may be just as important as your accountant, or as your tax attorney, or whatever. Obviously, you're going to describe the goods or services, so that's pretty routine. You perceive that there's a need out there. You perceive there's a need for your product. Somehow you say, well, like in the case of those guys that dropped out of Stanford to make a great search engine and became Google. You know, they thought there was a real need, that the search engines that existed weren't good. I can make a better search engine than anybody around. And they did. And that's, you know, still the cornerstone of Google is their outstanding search engine. Although they do a great many things today, that search engine was what got them started. It's just like the Windows operating system for Bill Gates. You know, Windows, clever idea. You know, before that, it wasn't so easy to click and get the image, click, get the image. So Windows was you know, these are just a couple thoughts that these guys had that became great products. So the vision You know, there's a market need there. I see that people would like to have this, and I know how to deliver it. Let's see. Okay. Who was serving the market before Bill Gates or before those guys made Google? Kind of served in a clumsy way, I'd say, in those two cases. I try to think of another one here. Ben and Jerry's, you know, a couple of Vermont boys. They made Ben and Jerry's ice cream, a lot of flavors, really good. Certainly, there was certainly ice cream around before those guys made ice cream. But boy, they zoomed up in the market really fast with somehow a vision, more flavors, more distribution, more something. The people decided to give them a lot of money for Ben and Jerry's as opposed to all the other ice cream cones that were out there. Okay, now this is interesting. The third bullet and the fourth bullet can be a little bit connected. I'd say one of the most common mistakes is pricing, in the sense that, you know, one of your strategies could be to have the lowest price. Walmart's strategy is usually to have the lowest price. They have a maze of products that Walmart delivers. And I think their theme in almost all their ads is the lowest price. Or we'll match. You know, by the way, find another price for this product, and I'll match it. So very clearly their strategy is the lowest price. There are other companies that I can think of, like Mercedes-Benz and BMW. German automotive companies are, gee, their prices are way up here, and yet people buy their goods like mad because they got a reputation for durability and quality. So, you know, what's your strategy going to be? You're going to match the competition in pricing? You're going to beat them in pricing? You're going to put forth a premium price. Well, if you're going to have a premium price, then you better have a premium product. Not in your eyes, in the eyes of the customer. The customers, I just saw this, by the way, the BMW just the other day. I think that they have more sales in China right now because China's making millionaires and billionaires faster than anybody. And so they got a lot of money, these guys, and so they buy good cars, you know, because they have the money. Sales. Website's probably your key today. Website's really key. One of my hobbies is astronomy, so I'm usually off at the astronomy center we have down south of Mount Vernon, and whenever we ask an audience, usually over 100, how did they hear about the program or what did they know about it? And we ask them, did they read about it in the paper, or did they read about it in Linn County, because Linn County owns the land, or do you read about from our own newsletter? No. Website, half the audience goes up with website. So I mean, website is, today, that's probably how they know about stuff. Advertising, a lot of different forms of advertising. Some inexpensive, some quite expensive. You have radio, TV. TV is very expensive, can be very effective. I'm not an expert in that area, but the pricing is all over the map. Sales literature. Two companies that I worked for, both GE and Rockwell Collins, had a lot of sales literature, and in my viewpoint, both of it was very, very good. I mean, colored brochures. They showed you the product, but they also gave you an image of, like Jim worked in displays over there. They had beautiful images of cockpits, beautiful images of auto landing and weather. I mean, they know how to take the product or system and portray it into the function that it did. Really good. So I mean, that's the catch. I mean, this set of electronic boxes or displays, that's what they are, electronic boxes. But the function they do, you need to portray the function. I think that both Rockwell Collins does that very well, and I think both the company I worked at GE did it very well too. Public relations, that's pretty broad too. Community, even right now, Rockwell Collins, I think, spends, believe it or not, I think $2.5 million each year just in community relations, just, you know, funding things that science, education, pretty buildings, whatever they do, you know. So, augment your image. Okay. It's going to take you some money to get started, and I'd say don't go too low on this. Many startups are undercapitalized, and that hurts. They get surprised in a variety of ways, and they almost get it done, almost get it right, almost get it developed, almost have enough money for advertising, almost have it. But you know what? They didn't take it. They didn't admit to the amount of resources they needed to really get up on the step. And so that's your non-recurring cost. Don't borrow more money than you need is what I'm saying, but make sure you borrow enough to do the job. I guess that's what I'm putting it to. Whether you rent the facility, whether you buy it, you know, it's just a study trade-off. What should I do? Normally you'd be renting it if you're a small business. You may buy it if you got favorable terms. If it was a bigger business. Obviously you're going to have good state-of-the-art electronic equipment, good media, good all that sort of thing. I don't know why I put furniture first. I put equipment, yeah, some furniture too. I should twist those two things around. The rest of it's classical, and my experience, as I told you, is that most of the clients I work with at SCORE do a very good job on cost. They really do. They can measure their material costs, they can measure their rent, they can measure their utilities, they measure their insurance. They know exactly what their loan is, they know the terms from the bank. So they do that really well. And the risk is the first visuals I showed you. That's where the heart of the risk is, from my experience with working with SCORE.